This week's episode is about a tough-as-nails Autobot who'll go to any lengths to protect those she cares about. These are the basics on CHROMIA. CHROMIA was an original character created by writer Beth Bornstein for the Transformers animated series in 1985, appearing in the second season episode, The Search for Alpha Trion. She was one of the first female Transformers introduced into the franchise, a tough, fast-thinking, straight-talking bot who transformed into a Cybertronian car. CHROMIA was second in command of a team of female Autobots led by Elita One, who had remained on Cybertron when Optimus Prime and his team left the planet, and had continued to wage a guerrilla war against the Decepticons there. After a mission to steal energy from a Decepticon storehouse led by CHROMIA went wrong, Optimus and a squad of his men returned to Cybertron to help the imperiled Elita and her team. In the process, CHROMIA was reunited with her old flame, Ironhide, though the war forced them to part ways again when he returned to Earth, and she stayed to continue the fight on Cybertron. As a character created for the cartoon, no toys of CHROMIA were available in the original 1980s toy line, and she spent the next 20 years in complete obscurity. The only notable time her name was heard for 2 decades was when the Japanese version of 2005's Transformers Cybertron reused it for a new character unrelated to the original, a flighty and flirtatious Decepticon speedboat, who in English-speaking markets was instead named Thunderblast. Around the same time as this character appeared though, the original CHROMIA began a slow return to prominence, but it was a bit of a bumpy road getting there. There were plans for CHROMIA to appear in Dreamwave Productions comic books in 2005, in a story that would have depicted her and the other female Autobots as agents of the evil alien Quintessons, but the company went out of business before it could be published. After that, it was the official Transformers convention BotCon who actually brought CHROMIA back, when a toy of her was released exclusively at the show that year, a recolor of Transformers Energon RC, which transformed into a motorcycle. However, the figure was designed to be CHROMIA's fellow female Autobot Moonracer, but it had been discovered too late that the trademark on her name couldn't be secured, so the toy was sold as CHROMIA only as a last-minute quick fix, and it didn't actually look like her. Still, it did net CHROMIA an appearance in the convention's exclusive comic book, battling Insecticon clones created by Decepticon Emperor Deathsaurus. Identity issues continued to plague CHROMIA when she was introduced into the world of the live-action movies in 2009's Revenge of the Fallen. This film featured a trio of female Autobot motorcycles, but it didn't really give any information about them as characters. Some sources said they were all components of RC, whose single mind controlled all 3 bodies, but others, including the movie toy line, identified them as 3 separate characters: the sisters, RC, Elita One, and CHROMIA. Tie-in comics eventually cleared up the confusion, explaining that the 3 sisters had once been separate bots, but had been fused together in an experiment by the Decepticon mad scientist, Flatline. But even with these inconsistencies, CHROMIA's profile continued to rise over the next couple of years, as Transformers Animated and Transformers Prime versions of her were briefly featured in those series' ancillary media. Until finally, in 2014, the first true dedicated CHROMIA toy was released in the Transformers Generations line, a heavy retool of Transformers Prime RC, styled after CHROMIA's appearance in the original cartoon, but with a Cybertronian motorcycle alternate mode. To promote this new toy, CHROMIA was introduced into the world of IDW Publishing's comic books in a special crossover storyline, an issue of which came packaged with the figure. In IDW's universe, CHROMIA hailed from a Cybertronian colony on the planet Caminus, and served as bodyguard to the Camian envoy Windblade when they came to Cybertron soon after the end of the war, seeking aid for their energy-starved world. Unimpressed by Cybertron and distrustful of its ruler, Starscream, CHROMIA quickly decided that she needed to get Windblade back to Caminus for her own safety. But with Windblade determined to see her mission through, CHROMIA was forced to take extreme measures, secretly staging a bombing in an effort to scare Windblade into going home. When Windblade discovered what her friend had done, she initially covered up CHROMIA's actions to prevent Camian Cybertronian relations from collapsing. But when CHROMIA saw how much Windblade was suffering after compromising her morals, she confessed to her crimes and went to prison. Eventually, though, she was pardoned by Starscream, who saw something of himself in her and wanted her to have the chance to be a better bot that nobody had ever given him. This proved to be CHROMIA's big breakthrough moment. Her Generations toy went on to be released in Japan as part of the Transformers Legends line with a more cartoon-inspired paint job, leading to her showing up in the Legends manga, while her appearance in IDW's comics would serve as direct inspiration for her next big role in the 2018 cartoon Transformers Cyberverse. In this series, CHROMIA was again depicted as a Camian, who initially tried to convince Windblade to return to their world to escape the dangers of Cybertron's war, but later wound up joining the Autobots in their fight. CHROMIA had several spotlight adventures in the series, including an escape mission after she and Perceptor were captured by the Decepticons and used to lure the Autobots into a trap, and when Windblade overexerted her telepathic powers and shattered her mind, CHROMIA teamed up with Bumblebee to hunt down and restore the scattered fragments of her friend's psyche. Now, the only figure of CHROMIA in the Cyberverse toy line was a super deformed tiny turbo changer released in 2020. But a few years later, in 2024, the Cyberverse incarnation of the character received a full-size toy in the Transformers Legacy line, a retool of Legacy animated Prowl, which transformed into an earthly motorcycle. In 2019, another figure of CHROMIA was released in the Siege toy line, the first to transform into a Cybertronian car reminiscent of her original cartoon alternate mode. This figure earned her a role in the tie-in Netflix animated series, in which she was once again characterized as a Camian fighting in the war for Cybertron. As in the original cartoon, when Optimus Prime left the planet, CHROMIA was among those who remained behind under the command of Elita One, and ultimately lost her life when her team bombed Decepticon headquarters and were caught in the blast. In conjunction with the Siege toys, IDW rebooted their comic books, introducing a new universe in which CHROMIA again enjoyed a recurring role. Here, she was head of Cybertronian security operations in the days before the war, investigating murders committed by the terrorist organization that eventually rose to become the Decepticons. And that brings us up to date on the bumpy journey of CHROMIA. From Cybertron to Caminus, from Ironhide's gal to Windblade's pal, from a one-episode wonder to one of the most significant female Autobots around. And those are the basics on CHROMIA. Which is your favourite incarnation? Bike or car? Have your say in the comments. For more Transformers characters, history and lore like this, remember to subscribe and click that bell so you don't miss each new episode. Or if you just can't wait, you can get them early and ad-free by supporting the show on Patreon.